and good evening, and once again, welcome to the Shadow Gallery. I am, as always, your host, James Donnelly, and it's Monday night, so little hand on the watch says it's time to do new comics, bitches! So, first, on a personal note, I really want to thank James Crowder 77, Ghost Critic, and Sleepy Reader 666 for taking the time to do some fantastic reviews of my script, Batman the Unknown, to do your critiques on this script. It means a tremendous amount to me. You have no idea what this has meant to me, because well, first of all, of course, it's really nice to hear positive feedback from people who read comics. I've never really shown this to anybody who reads comics except for one other person. He liked it too, but you know, this first time that I've had people who were really you know, into the art of comics and the storytelling of comics really comment on it. And first of all, there's some excellent points that were made in the criticisms. I definitely want to address that, and I will address these things in probably more in a more elaborate way at some time when the contest is over. So remember, that is the ending of the contest is, sorry, it is the 6th of August. So, ooh, scary. So the 6th of August is when that contest is done, and I will select my winner. So far there are 3 entries. I know, Sleepy Reader, I know that you said that you do not consider yours an official entry because you've won other stuff lately, and so you just wanted to do it because you're just a really fucking cool guy. And that means a lot to me, but I'm still considering it an entry, so too bad. So please, you know, if you are so inclined, go on to the Shadow Gallery comics.tumblr.com and take a gander at the blog heading Batman the Unknown, and you'll read the script. Again, it's a long script, and yes, when I did write that, I was thinking like 3 or 4 issue, like prestige edition type of comic, like a big, you know, like 48 pager or something like that. But the main reason I said 3 is because I know that I really broke it down into 3 acts. Obviously, if I ever, you know, took the time to really write this as a comic book script, I would make things, you know, still more concise. And anyway, I'm still getting too far away from the point here. Point is, I will address these things, like I said, you know, hopefully as more reviews come in, and I will address more of these issues, and you know, we'll talk more about that. So, but anyway, just really, I was very excited to wake up the other day and saw, you know, two new videos from you guys, and it was a real thrill, and thank you very much. It really, made my day, especially since I'm starting a new shift at work, and I've moved from part-time to full-time, so I have a lot less time to have like a really good day. So, but this week, of course, is the opening of The Dark Knight Rises. So on Thursday, I'm sure that you'll probably be looking forward to that, because it will most likely be on Friday night that I will be putting up my review of The Dark Knight Rises, because I am going to go see the entire 3-film trilogy, you know, starting at 6 p.m. and then, you know, so it's 164 minutes for The Dark Knight Rises. So anyway, so So it's unlikely that you'll get a video this Thursday night, because I'll just probably be just way too whacked out to do one properly. So you know, a lot of news out of SDCC this weekend. I followed a lot of it. You know, one of the big things that came out this weekend was that Tim Drake apparently, you know, in the Teen Titans issue 0, when they're doing the 0 issues, whenever the hell that's going to be, in August or something, or September, whatever it's going to be, that's going to basically erase Tim Drake's past as Robin, and he will no longer be a Robin, which makes no sense, because we have one of the comic books that we'll all be talking about this week, Batman and Robin, has obviously, you know, in the last issue, had definitely talked about Tim Drake's past as Robin. So that to me is a little, more than a little bizarre. The big thing for me, personally, was the 10th anniversary of Firefly panel. Thank God that a lot of people put up the entire thing on YouTube, because obviously that was one of the things that I was really bummed that I couldn't be there in person for. It was very, very awesome for those of you who are fans of that show, and it was very, very moving. So that was just really cool. So you know, as far as other things, like Thomas Jane made, you know, with the help of director Phil Joannou, who's done some really lame-o films like Heaven's Prisoners, but also did one fantastic great film called State of Grace. Basically, the two of them teamed up and made like a 10-minute like Punisher kind of, not fan film, but basically, you know, TJ put up his own money and said, you know what, I feel like being the Punisher at least one more time on film. So for those of you who haven't seen it yet, I definitely recommend that you track it down. It's I think it's just called Dirty Laundry. I don't think that it's meant to draw distinct parallel. You know, I don't know, because of rights issues and so on and so forth with Marvel and Lionsgate, if you know, because I don't think, you know, obviously this is not, they didn't do it to make any money, because it's on YouTube. So anyway, so let's actually talk about comics. First we're going to start off with, I don't know why I end up starting off with these 8-legged titles so often, but we start off with Scarlet Spider number 7. So basically what we have here is that, first of all, those of you who aren't reading this comic, it's a really, really good comic, and you should get on board with it, because it's a lot better than you probably would expect. Because it's less of, you know, it is a throwback to the 90s, but it's less of the, you know, hoodie-wearing Ben Reilly kind of Scarlet Spider, as much, you know, it's Kane, you know, and it's much more about kind of not really a path to redemption, but eventually, you know, it's kind of going in that direction, that, you know, that there will be a sort of, you know, that he will find some kind of redemption in his heroic deeds, but still he's playing the reluctant hero very, very well. And, you know, so we start off with a really bizarre event that, you know, he's swinging around. And that's another thing. I like the fact that it's set in Houston, because it's, you know, it's so far removed from, you know, from New York, and, you know, because everything normally is going on in New York. So I'm liking that it's set there. And so basically, the one of Roxxon Oil's, yes, Roxxon, you heard that right. Roxxon Oil's, one of their rigs offshore of Galveston blows up, and that's where it kind of kicks off. And then there's, you know, and Scarlet Spider's just kind of swinging around Houston, and then all of a sudden, a rocket goes into one of the Roxxon Oil buildings, or comes out of it. So that's the thing, is I don't know if it went into or came out of. It's all very strange. and Kane, he saves everybody from the falling debris from the building, and saves, this beautiful young woman, catches her and everything like that, and, she's so kind of jazzed that her life was saved by him that she just gives him a big old kiss, and he returns it, and, so they kind of end up in flagrante delicto with one another, even though he kind of knows that it's a mistake. And and she reveals that it was her that actually fired the missile. So he gets out of there pretty quick, and basically this all leads back into how Roxxon is becoming kind of this villainous organization once again. He breaks into the building and he intimidates one of the IT staff so that he'll give him the kind of the secret info on what exactly happened on this exploded oil rig, and then actually goes in to make some noise with the CEO of Roxxon, and then is confronted by a super team that call themselves the Rangers, and alluding presumably to Texas Rangers, and not the ball club, and not a bunch of Army Rangers, but Texas Rangers. So it's art's done in this issue by Koi Pham. Sadly, it wasn't Ryan Stegman. And it kind of just left behind the kind of the Craven stuff that was going on in the previous issue, in favor of creating this whole new arc. And it was a really, the character work that Chris Yost is doing on Kane, and with the various characters that are populating his world, like Araceli and the cop and the paramedic. It's really, really good stuff, and the dialogue is really crisp and sharp, and it always seems to be kind of gaining momentum, and that's a good thing for a comic book. So I really enjoyed this issue. Really looking forward to the next issue. So it was a very solid 4 out of 5 for Scarlet Spider number 7. So this moves on to more 8-legged, in this case 16-legged. Because we're talking about Spider-Men, number 3. This was a fantastic issue. This was this series has it really had nowhere to go but up from the first issue, but it's really gotten to a point where it's getting pretty raw and pretty emotional, because we have Miles and Peter basically squaring off against the Ultimate U's Mysterio, this is his avatar that's still in the Ultimate Universe, and he himself, the real Mysterio, is actually back on Earth 616. So he's controlling all this from 616. And of course, what does Mysterio do? Now, I wasn't terribly familiar with Mysterio of the Ultimate U, but he's basically very similar to to Quentin Beck, the 616 Mysterio, that he basically uses a bunch of special effects and so on and so forth to and hallucinations and gas and so on and so forth to really tap into the fears of of Spider-Man and of his foes, period. But of course, in this particular case, it is both Spider-Man's fears, their worst enemies, so on and so forth. And for instance, Peter squaring off against Hammerhead and Green Goblin and Venom and what have you, and Miles is squaring off against Ultimate Scorpion. And ultimately, Ultimate Hulk, and ultimately Uncle Aaron, And once Mysterio is finally put down, Ultimate Iron Man, Thor, and Nick Fury and Hawkeye are there to kind of help with the cleanup. And Tony's looking at the tech, and he's really pondering, okay, where did it come from, what's going on, and how do we find out where the real Mysterio is, and this somehow all has to tie in with how this Peter Parker got to this universe, this dimension, if you will. But Peter himself is actually taken off. He's left, and he desperately wants to find out what the hell happened to this universe's Peter Parker. So he goes by his old address, in Forest Hills, and it's like a convenience store, and he actually ends up stopping a robbery there, of course. And the woman behind the counter has a medallion on, a Spider-Man, like a Spider-Man face medallion, and she says that she's doing it out of respect for the little guy. And he looks on, he picks up Wi-Fi, and he's looking at, kind of an iPad, whatever type of thing, a tablet, and he sees the headline of, Spider-Man dead. And he goes, and at the very end, he goes to the house of where Aunt May and Gwen Stacy are living in and actually are moving out of. And, there's just this devastating moment where he's looking at them in the spider suit, and they're yelling at him, and they're telling him how dare you, and what are you doing, and he takes off his mask, and just tears are just streaming down his face, and they're looking at and they're looking at him, and there's just this moment, and then that's the issue, just ends there. I mean, it was a really, it was a beautiful moment, a very, very difficult one to pull off as well as this issue did. Now, of course, Bendis, he knows how to write good stuff, and this is obviously very apparent in this particular issue, but it also has the added benefit of Sarah Pichelli's artwork. She is just amazing. The work that she does, the detail that she puts into every single frame is really astonishing. She is a terrific, terrific artist. And I will definitely be looking for more of her stuff in the future. So this was an easy 4.5 out of 5. This was just, it was a wonderfully structured issue. Some great moments. This big action beat centerpiece, followed by this this very smaller scale, but much larger in the scape of the emotional scape of this title. So just great work on Spider-Man #3. Continuing on in the Ultimate universe, we have Ultimate X-Men #14. So this is the beginning of Divided We Fall, which is basically where all of the Ultimate Universe is going to come together on this one, for the first time, for this kind of, not relaunch, but this newer version of the Ultimate Universe, which thankfully Jeff Loeb is nowhere near. And, so we, and it's, basically about the United States and how it is in this massive state of disrepair. I mean, the government's destroyed. We've just, there's been this, massive fighting, with, the Sentinels and the Nimrod Sentinels and, Stryker and, and then also, of course, in the Ultimates you have, everything with, with the city and, the Tomorrow People and everything like that. And it was just, so I mean, you've had these huge scale things, and now it's gonna get even bigger, I think. Now, again, this is Brian Wood writing this, so now a lot of people have told me, or a lot of people that I've read or watched on YouTube, said this is very reminiscent of Brian's work on DMZ, which is I have never read it. I've never read any of his previous work, to be perfectly honest. And I'm starting to really look forward to reading some of that. So I think I'm going to be getting probably one or two of the DMZ books pretty soon, so I can kind of get more into this, because I'm just from these first 2 issues, really enjoying what he's doing on Ultimate X-Men. It is, yes, it is far and away a lot better than what Nick Spencer was doing, just because, again, it's not Nick Spencer's wheelhouse. It's not what he's great at. So anyway, with this issue, we have, we have Kitty and Rogue and Bobby and Jim and Jimmy basically traveling across country trying to get to the Southwest U.S., which of course is the most dangerous place to be, because that's where all the Nimrod Sentinels are. That's where all the anti-mutant militia members are. And this story, I mean, obviously so far very much told from the point of view of Kitty. So I mean, it's interesting how, and this is maybe even set up kind of this way, just kind of from the beginning, that Kitty was the one to say, okay, look, we're not getting involved anymore. We're going to stay in the sewers and we're going to survive. But obviously that all changed when she killed Stryker and his consciousness downloaded into all of the Nimrod Sentinels. And so there are government agents that are trying to pacify all mutant activity, because they're afraid of a revolution by mutants. And of course this is basically just kind of government masquerading. It's basically bigotry masquerading as government. But once they are for heroes here are getting more towards the Southwest, they're seeing more examples of this bigotry. And there's this great and really suspenseful scene in which they do get stopped by a militia checkpoint, and Kitty is brought out of the car and basically has a gun held to her head to kind of prove that she's not a mutant. And so this whole issue is kind of like Kitty's new manifesto, if you will. It's basically her ideas of how this all has to go. And she feels that it even may be a suicide mission, but she's not, her friends that are there will help, and and maybe there's even kind of a romance that's brewing between her and Jimmy, that she, or at least Jimmy, is kind of has feelings for her. Maybe she doesn't for him, but there are it's peppered with all these little moments, and we have Kitty kind of laying out her plan for us in her internal monologue, basically saying that once they cripple what's going on in the Southwest, then the other dominoes are just going to fall, because without any kind of support structure, and she looks at it from a very almost from a very kind of mathematical point of view, if you will. It's like, okay, well, this very much cause and effect. This happens, if we can do this, then this will happen, and this is just the inevitable chain of events that has to happen from this moment forward. So to see Kitty, not retreating, but actually going directly into the jaws of hell, is it has brought such vitality to this comic. So I mean, and just the artwork by Paco Medina is terrific, and this is just, I mean, and the subplot with what's going on back in the Morlock tunnels. Is it a nightmare, or is it really happening? These are the kind of questions that this book is asking, and it's just it's really tremendous stuff. And so this was just another really good. This week was actually populated by some really good books, and unfortunately some really bad ones, but mostly good ones. So very solid 4.5 out of 5 for Ultimate X-Men number 14. Another really good one from this week. A lot of the best stuff actually came out of Marvel this week. Is Captain America number 14. This, in my estimation, is actually the best issue of this comic that there's been so far. All of them have been kind of, in the kind of 3.5 to 4-star range. This gets close to being perfect. Brubaker, what he does here is just really, again, upping the ante with, basically, where Cap, this is the final battle between Cap and the new Scourge. And of course, Cap doesn't know who he's fighting until, unfortunately, it's too late. He doesn't realize that he's fighting D-Man, that he's fighting Dennis Dunphy. And I don't even want to really talk about too much of the events in this book, because it's pretty shocking what happens here. Just the, and just the kind of emotional impact that this book has. And, because this is what, Brubaker was so awesome at on this title, was not only, giving Steve these really great emotional moments, and also, also giving Bucky some really big, emotional moments. But we have these moments where we really get to see into the supporting cast. And that is, I think, where Brubaker's strongest suit on Cap has always been. That, he really brings a lot of life out of his supporting cast. Now, this book is going to be taken over by Cullen Bunn pretty soon. Whether or not I'll keep reading it has to be determined. I'm not a fan of Cap and whoever. It's Hawkeye right now, and in a couple issues it'll be somebody else, and a couple of other issues it'll be somebody else. Like, I think Cap and the Falcon are coming soon, so on and so forth. So I'm not really that jazzed about him taking over, but because he just doesn't really have, he doesn't have the writer's instincts that Brubaker does. He just doesn't. So it'll be kind of a sad time when that happens, to see Brubaker essentially drop out of Captain America altogether. But at least it will, at least he'll still be continuing Winter Soldier, which has been awesome. So, I mean, like I said, I mean, this is all kind of getting to a point where we are coming to a final confrontation, maybe not a final confrontation, but the big confrontation between Cap and his kind of, like I said, his supporting cast, versus Codename Bravo and the Viper Queen. So I mean, it's just, I'm really looking forward to the way this is going to go. So this issue was just fantastic. It was everything that I'd been missing about Captain America. So 4.5 out of 5, absolutely. I'm again, not a terribly huge fan of Pat Searcher's work, but on the art, but that's still it's still good. It's still very serviceable. Now on to one of the not so good ones, and that is Fantastic Four Annual number 33. This one I read in the store and just put back, because my comic book store is cool that way. Is they will just let you read things, and if you don't want it, you don't have to have it. So they had a copy. They put this in. Because I have Fantastic Four in my pull box. And so they put that in there, and so I'm reading it, and I didn't realize this was going to be written and drawn by Alan Davis. I was hoping it was going to have Alan Davis art, but I didn't realize he was writing it as well. Mostly because I don't think that Alan Davis is a particularly strong writer. And that really is proven here. Because this is basically, it's so fucking weird, this issue. It's because it's like, it's Ben and Johnny are back at the Baxter building, and they kind of get sucked into this whole kind of this reversal of time, and Doctor Strange ends up with them because it's all with Clandestine, the Clandestine, which I know nothing about. I don't know who they are, how they operate. I know that they had their own comic for a while during the 90s. I care nothing about them. This issue was so filled with just these really confusing bits that I just couldn't hang on. And I mean, really the only reason to even pick it up is because it does have some really great Alan Davis art. But aside from that, this is really, it's nothing. It's you know, it will have no lasting impact on the universe itself, which is the case with most annuals. But you would like an annual at least to be good, you know. So, and this just wasn't good. It was, you know, I mean, like I said, art alone merits it a 2 out of 5. But other than that, it's nothing. Wolverine and the X-Men, number 13. Probably the biggest surprise. No, I take that back. Not the biggest surprise of the week, because the biggest surprise of the week will be my pick of the week. But definitely one of the biggest surprises of this week, and a wonderful surprise, because this is the way that these other tie-in titles will survive the AVX curse, is if they concentrate on doing these very personal, very emotional, smaller scale stories within this larger, within this larger world, where obviously other stuff from AVX is going on, because in this issue we have, basically it's the story of Warbird, and how she became, Warbird on Shire. And the first page is a really wonderful shout out to Watchmen. I thought, I don't know if those of you who read that really caught that, but I just thought that was really cool. I thought that was a really cool touch. But because she's getting like Rorschach tests and everything like that, and she's it's neat. If you read it, you'll get it. If you read it and you're a fan of Watchmen, obviously. But we have here is like I said, it's a very personal story about her and how she came to be. And the best way that I could sum this issue up is that there are obviously on Shire, and especially the things that that she's been trained to do. Like her first word, for instance, is recoilless. So I mean, even her first word has to do with death, and and weapons and everything like that. So it's just to have that, and we see her kind of dispensing death to kind of these terrorist cells throughout the in this one area of Shire, or Shiar, however it's pronounced, I don't know. But we have because they're supposed to live their lives a certain way, and when she's feeling, I think the word that she even used was perverse. She does something that we as humans would think, well, this is totally normal human behavior to do. But of course, Shire, it's an alien civilization. So especially to someone who, has made it their business to make war and to, deal death, it's extremely out of character, if you will, for those moments. But it's, but learning more about this character that we know next to nothing about, other than the fact that she kicks ass and she is, she seems to have some pretty liberal sexual views, are pretty awesome. But her main task is of course being charged with protecting Kid Gladiator. And there is of course the big fight between Gladiator and the his death, the Shire Death Commandos and the Phoenix Force 5. And we also are seeing how these 5 are really being corrupted by the Phoenix Force, and it's you know, I mean, it's all very secondary to the story that Jason Aaron is telling in this issue. And it's a terrific story, of course, rendered beautifully by Nick Bradshaw. Just what a talent that guy is. So I mean, to me it is kind of, you know, it can get to be kind of a toss-up as to who's the better artist, either Chris Bachalo or Nick Bradshaw. Personally, right now, I'm digging Bradshaw's work more than I am Bachalo's art, even though Bachalo does great work. Fuck. So an easy 4.5 out of 5 to Wolverine and the X-Men number 13. This brings me on to the indie segment. So we will start with Valiant Press. Wow. I almost feel bad that I didn't really read this stuff back in the 90s, although from all estimation it wasn't that good anyway. But damn if this stuff isn't good now. So we have Bloodshot number 1. Now again, it's fun for me, I guess, coming at this because I'm a very new reader to these characters. I have no idea what they're about until I start reading the actual book. I mean, so obviously we have Exo Man of War, you know, Visigoths and, you know, Romans and, you know, suit of unimaginable power, and you know, Harbinger, we have, you know, psionics and, you know, so on and so forth. But with Bloodshot, we are entering, of course, into more comic book sci-fi territory. We have a soldier, seems to be kind of a, you know, kind of a black ops kind of guy. You know, he's got his wife and his family, and basically his friend has been taken hostage in Afghanistan. So he goes, you know, he parachutes in by himself to go save him. And in midair, he is blown apart by a rocket in pretty graphic fashion. And as he's taken back to their headquarters, you know, whoever these terrorists are, and is also the place that they're keeping his friend, that they're going to execute, he starts to let his nanites do his work. And you know, his handler Hutch is kind of talking him through this, and, you know, so I mean, because his body is just fried, it's gone, but, you know, the nanites basically remake his body, and it's, you know, it's basically this pale face with this red dot in the center, you know, this red dot in the center of his chest. And, you know, he's able to kind of not shapeshift, but take on the appearance of other people so that he can kind of sneak in. And once he does, and once he gets to his target objective, is where, of course, everything starts to go wrong. It goes wrong in a very unusual and bizarre and torturous fashion. And we learn that this soldier is a member of Project Bloodshot, or he is Project Bloodshot. And his memory is being downloaded by someone who actually helped, basically seems to be a traitorous organization that is looking to basically download information out of his head to basically get, you know, to get all these dirty little secrets that these members of Project Rising Spirit have implanted in him. But also with those secrets, they have also implanted memories. And here it kind of gets into some interesting, almost kind of Blade Runner-ish territory, because they've been, you know, we find out that Bloodshot has been actually programmed with memories of different lives. And he believes that they're totally and completely real, but in fact they're not. So, and, you know, not only from the people who have captured him, but the people who are actually his handlers are fucking with him. And it's just, this was a really, really, really good first issue for this, because it makes you want to come back and find out what the hell is going to happen next. So I mean, it's fascinating to me. So this is written by Dwayne Swarzinski, who not a huge fan of, but you know, he does good work from time to time, and this is definitely one of those better works. And we have art by Manuel Garcia and Arturo Lozzi, and they kind of share the artwork in different ways, like different stories, different points of view are told through these different artistic styles. So that when you have two artists on an issue, that's the only way to really make it work, is to give you a couple different points of view and have the artists separate them by points of view. So that's where it's another way that this comic really shines. So this was a very, very solid 4, bordering on 4.5 for Bloodshot #1. I'm just really excited about this comic. I'm really excited about dipping into this universe. And which brings us to Harbinger #2. You know, I really dug the first issue, so I was looking forward to seeing how this next issue is going to play out. So basically, we have Peter. He's basically starting to realize his full potential as a psionic, and he's, you know, been recruited by Harada to fight these soldiers who are trying to capture him and put him down. Are soldiers of this project called Rising Spirit. There's that name again. So it looks like that we're actually having tie-ins already to other Valiant comics. So that to me is really, really interesting and exciting, that they're going to somehow tie this world together, to, you know, at least these two worlds of Bloodshot and Harbinger. So he's beginning to realize his full potential, again, with the help of Harada. So they escape the government troops, and he, you know, this mysterious Mr. Tull, you know, he kind of erases his memory. And, you know, he puts, like, his own, you know, his own pain into the bodies of the soldiers and everything like that. You know, everything that he feels, you know, this you know, constant cacophony of thoughts and sounds and noise, you know, this just, that always is in his mind. But Harada's going to help, you know, basically help teach him with the help of the Harbinger Foundation. But the first thing that he really has to do is he has to leave his old life behind. That, of course, means his friend Joe, his, you know, paranoid schizophrenic friend Joe, and the girl and this girl Chris that he made love him, you know, fall completely and totally head over heels in love with him, and he has to release his hold on her. And of course, that's a very difficult thing for him to do. But because, you know, this is, you know, kind of the girl of his dreams, so, but, you know, he lets her go, and of course, once she gets her memory back, she instantly wants to kill him, because essentially, you know, he has committed a really serious violation, and it's going to take some time for me to kind of get behind, you know, who Peter is and what exactly he's meant to do, because this was, you know, this is something that's going to be really hard for me as a reader to get past, that he's done something like this. Now, again, I mean, I appreciate the fact that you know, Joshua Dysart is trying to give him, you know, a pretty dark past. But again, this seems, you know, because of this violation, I mean, because it is, you know, it's sort of a form of rape. It's going to be hard for me to get past that. But what's going on with the peripheral characters and with the story itself is interesting and entertaining enough for me to want to keep reading. And it is telling it's telling a strong story. So again, this was, you know, it's a 4 out of 5, solid. For you know, for these guys, you know, Kari Evans doing a terrific job on art again with this issue. That brings us to Jennifer Blood, #14. Um, I read this issue. First time I read it, I was not terribly jazzed about it. I thought, okay, well, this is going a little bit too far off kind of the mission statement of this book. But ultimately, there really is no mission anymore because Jennifer has exterminated the Bloots. So she really, you know, and she's covered up her tracks. And with that issue, issue 12, in which she does kind of, you know, basically kills her next door neighbor, is responsible for the death of a cop and the hospitalization of another. We get the fact that, you know, while Garth Ennis was trying to create kind of, this is what his idea of the Punisher would be, that this is somebody who is, you know, who is unhinged, who without a mission is finding other things to do. And in this issue, we learn more about her husband, Andrew, and how he's been, you know, he had this, you know, this college girlfriend, Emma, who, you know, they broke up, and she has kind of re-entered his life as kind of a neighbor. And he, you know, still kind of fantasizes about the life they possibly could have had together. Because where he is right now, with Jennifer, he's very much of a cuckolded husband. He, you know, he doesn't feel like he has much worth. And she's, and this issue really demonstrates how Jennifer has really kind of, you know, like he, you know, she kind of forced him to quit teaching community college because it wasn't paying enough, because, you know, she says, well, if you want the baby to starve, you know, a lot of passive-aggressive bullshit. And, you know, but we have that, you know, that Emma is married to this guy who is very much into the idea of watching his wife basically fuck other men. And, you know, since, of course, they have this romantic history together, you know, they ask Andrew if this is something that he's interested in doing. And, you know, he's not too sure about it. But, you know, of course, there is, you know, kind of a lingering doubt, and he returns home to Jennifer, and she, you know, kind of, you know, very, you know, she's listening to an audiobook and everything like that, and, you know, she kind of gives him the brush off. But what she's really been doing is she actually planted a bug on him and has listened to this entire conversation. So he's, you know, she's basically thinking that this woman, that Emma, is trying to break up her marriage. And so she's starting to find another mission, and it is, you know, what this is starting to be is she's really becoming unhinged now that she has no kind of purpose. So to watch this kind of descent as it's gradually happening throughout these issues. And of course, you know, we have the cop who is, you know, talking to, you know, her dead partner, and is kind of teaming up with this, you know, kind of old school scumbag to, you know, to take Jennifer down. You know, she knows exactly who she is, or believes she knows exactly who she is. And so where this goes from here, I'm really, really interested to find out. So, you know, Al Ewing is doing a really good job of kind of displaying this kind of downward spiral, if you will, of Jennifer's psyche. So whether or not we'll actually see Jennifer kind of, you know, get reeled back into another kind of crime punishing mission, we don't know. But for right now, this is, you know, this is going in a very interesting direction. So I'm really enjoying this book a lot. So this was a very solid 4 out of 5 for me. You know, I'm enjoying how the tack that Ennis and Ewing are taking on this character. Buffy season 9, number 11. So basically, we have an issue of Buffy. She is basically, she's found out that Kennedy has taken a lot of these purposeless slayers corporate. And they are becoming bodyguards to VIPs. And, of course, you know, Buffy wants to, she wants a job that pays, and, potentially like a 401k or something like that, and, the chance to use her abilities, but just not in a Slayer capacity. And, so of course, she's put through kind of a test that she doesn't really realize is a test by Kennedy, in which she sees a demon. And so she instantly, she goes into Slayer mode and says, okay, demon, obviously evil, I'm going to chase the demon, and, because that must be the threat, and it's actually, just this, it's another human being is the threat. So, of course, she kind of fails that test, and what she's basically seeing is that she's kind of being slowly driven into obsolescence, because she even goes back to LA to see what they're kind of doing there, to fight the zompires, and get some staking in, and she sees that the police have actually, or San Francisco, where it was, I think it's San Francisco, to basically, they put together their own kind of anti-zompire strike force, and they're trained to deal with these situations now. So, she's kind of lost. So there, and then we have, so her first VIP that she's assigned to protect is, of course, this very Mark Zuckerberg-ish type of guy. And he's even kind of drawn like Mark Zuckerberg. And he is being threatened by a law firm. And that law firm is the law firm of Wolfram and Hart. Now, while I could say the one thing I will say about this issue is that there's some really interesting ideas happening here. I'm kind of digging the idea that she's really having trouble kind of finding her place now that, she's destroyed the seed of magic, and, there is no magic left in the world, so there's not really, and now there are anti-zompire, police forces out there. So, to kind of deal with things in, a more human element is very much out of her element. So those ideas are very strong. But here's where I get disappointed with this book, is that Andrew Chambliss, who's been writing Season 9 all the way through, which I think, unfortunately, is a really big mistake. Joss needs to hop on board here pretty quick. I mean, obviously, he's had a pretty fucking busy year. With doing the Avengers and, doing, Much Ado About Nothing and, so on and so forth. He's been very involved in other things, so I can understand that. But Joss needs to step in and say, okay, we can't just do, okay, this one guy on this title, because what did we have before? We had people, we had, Dross writing the first 4 issues or 6 issues, and then it jumps to Brian K. Vaughan doing a series of issues, then jumping to, like people like Brad Meltzer and Drew Goddard. So, I mean, and Jaina Spenzen. So, I mean, people who really know the Buffyverse, whether by, just watching it and being a fan of it, or actually working on the inside of it, like Drew Goddard and Jaina Spenzen. So, Andrew Chambliss, he's just not the guy for this. And that's really being proven here. He doesn't have the gist, he doesn't have the rhythms of these characters as well as these other people do. And that's really where the shame of it is that, Joss really needs to step in. I mean, he is, this is his baby. So, I mean, he needs to come back and he needs to say, look, we need to get, these ideas, which are really good, but we need to get more personality, more character work done, instead of just, kind of all Buffy all the time. Is what it really seems to have been lately. I mean, even with, characters like Spike and Andrew. Spike is, he's kind of disappearing because he's going to be getting his own series soon. And really where the good work is being done in the kind of Whedonverse on paper is being done on Angel and Faith. That's been a very consistently good series. You know, not only from, you know, Christos Gage really seems to get these characters and get their rhythms, but also it has, they have, you know, they've had, you know, of course, you know, great artists and Rebecca Isaacs, and people like Chris Samney. So, I mean, there's really good work going on over there, and it's not at the cost of this, but this is just really beginning to suffer, I think, because it's had, you know, and I would probably say the same thing maybe about Angel and Faith if it wasn't working quite so well under Christos Gage doing the writing. So Andrew Chambliss just is not doing a good job with this, not doing a very good job anyway. It's, you know, it was kind of getting past, you know, it was being passable before, or even good, and now it's just kind of ho-hum. At least Georges Jeantet is back on the art duty in this book. So this again was a disappointment. This was a 2.5 out of 5. Like I said, there's some really interesting ideas to explore here, but there's just, you know, the fun is just, it's like gone. I'm not laughing really. I'm not even chuckling. It's just kind of like, you know. Okay, so American Vampire, Lord of Nightmares, #2. This is basically, this issue really kind of concentrates on Scott Snyder's reworking of the character of Dracula into the mythology of American Vampire. And, you know, so we have Hobbs and we have Felicia Book kind of just, you know, Hobbs kind of discussing, you know, telling her the story of, you know, who Dracula really is, that Bram Stoker actually was a real guy, and that one of the older members of the Vassals of the Morning Star was actually under Stoker's care, because he was kind of like not a nurse, but because he was kind of old and senility was setting in, so he started to tell stories about this Dracula character. And basically what Dracula is in this mythology is he is the all-powerful still, but it's a different kind of power. It's not the kind of, you know, overly romantic power that we've seen in the past, or the just kind of out for vengeance kind of, you know, type of thing in the past, or just, you know, has his mindset, you know, his kind of singular focus on one person. He's less of a character and more of an idea, more of a kind of figurehead for the Carpathian vampires. And he is able to change people just by being in their presence. I mean, they, you know, because the Vassals did as best as they could to really incapacitate him and keep him dormant. And there's even a story here that ties into the stories of Jack the Ripper, and of course how that possibly tied into you know, the British monarchy at the time, of course, of the Whitechapel murders. So that was a very interesting little side bit there. But he is able to change people merely through the power of fear and the power of control. You know, just being around him, even in a dormant state, people will become fearful, violent. They'll become monsters, not, you know, not big vampire monsters, but they will become monstrous. You know, they're basically driven insane, and that's, you know, that's, to me, is a lot scarier of an idea than just, you know, well, you know, the kind of cape, and, you know, that he's just, you know, kind of, you know, that he's, you know, very aristocratic and very handsome and everything like that. We don't even know what he looks like yet. And this is one of the strengths, you know, where Snyder can take, obviously, arguably the most famous character in all of literature, and really work him into his own set of ideas, his own mythology. And this probably really harkens back to, you know, mean, because Snyder, he's an English major. He teaches at Sarah Lawrence when he's not writing comic books, and obviously, short story writer. I have Voodoo Heart here, and he's such a smart writer that he can really take this idea and really make it his own, and put his own spin on it. And so we see how this potential to actually control vampires is, again, as just an extension of himself, is, again, it's more frightening than just his personage, I guess. And we have this kind of Renfield-esque character that we met in the first issue, and, we actually see, because this is in the 50s, this is in the midst of kind of the Cold War, and essentially Dracula is being sold to the Soviet Union. And we have kind of this, again, this very Renfield-esque character that is, very allegiant to his master, and we see that these two Soviet army officials or party officials are going to take possession of him. For what purpose yet we don't know, but we see how this kind of like I said, this Renfieldish character really wants to kind of change the stakes here and kind of turn the tide more in his master's favor. That his master is not someone just to be used, and we're willing to see. We're able to see how far he's willing to go to satiate his master, and it's pretty horrifying. But just, terrific art by Dustin Nguyen. Again, he's working, in a much more kind of grayscale than he's ever worked in before, and it's really, 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 really good stuff. So I'm very, very pleased with the way that this series is turning out so far. And I was, because I was scared of where it was going at first with the introduction of Dracula into the American vampire world, into its mythology. But I should have known that Snyder was going to be smart enough to take the reins back. So now we're going to move on to other creatures of the night, and we're going to move on to DC. And we're going to start with Batgirl number 11. So basically, we have Babs kind of going up against Nightfall and her crew, if you will. They all have different skill sets and everything like that. And Nightfall is it's like almost a female-looking version of Azrael, as we would either come to see him or as we saw him before. It has the kind of almost the tunic of like a crusader type of soldier, and she's controlling all of these other that we saw Babs fighting with in the previous issue, and I'm excited to see Barbara in this very kind of heroic sensibility, where it's like she even says at a certain point, kind of before the fight begins, that the Barbara from just a couple of months ago would have split immediately, but this is who I am now, and she's basically in full ass kicking mode, but still she's very much overpowered by this group of super-powered individuals, and is saved kind of at the last minute by Detective McKenna, who goes all the way back to the first issue as the cop that really feels that Barbara's responsible for the one cop's death, from the very first issue, and how she this detective McKenna, she has secrets of her own, and that's ultimately what she uses to save Barbara. But is she really saving her, or are there more secrets? And in this issue, we do learn a lot more about Melody McKenna and who she is and why she's doing the things that she's doing. You know, we learn about Charisse, who of course is this character of Nightfall, and you know, Charisse Carnes, and you know, her kind of very ugly history. That, you know, yes, she did murder her family with the 2 blades that she's actually carrying as the character of Nightfall, and she was actually put in Arkham Asylum. And Arkham Asylum, of course, had a big breakout, and you know, and that is where McKenna's husband kind of met his fate. And of course, it was all the fault of the mayor because it was an election year, so on and so forth, and you know, they sent the cops in way too early, and of course, you know, she froze, just like she did in the first issue. You know, she's really suspicious of who Batgirl is working for. If she's working for the DEO. And, and Barbara's very, against this idea that, you know, how could she possibly be working for the DEO? And basically it's because McKenna says, well, you've already got an infiltrator amongst your ranks. And who is that infiltrator? I won't give it away, but it's a member of the Bat family. And since I just mentioned DEO, you probably know who it is already. So this was, again, this is a book that's been getting stronger gradually, from its beginning. There's some growing pains that Gail Simone was going through at the beginning, just kind of wasn't with the book. And, she's really making these characters and these events a lot stronger, a lot more personal. And here we finally do get James Jr. is back in the picture. And he is bringing Alicia back to the apartment that she shares with Barbara. And you just feel like the malevolence just sort of dripping off of him. But of course, he is the perfect sweetheart to her. She actually wants to get it on with him because he's being such a nice guy, and he does the uber nice thing of not taking advantage of her because she's drunk, and and says that he's even got her a present. And what is this present? I mean, it literally every moment that he has in this book, I want to see and I'm sure it's coming soon, but just a whole book dedicated to telling how James Jr. is going to, again, impede on Barbara's life and possibly strike it again at the people that she cares about the most, and even strike at her directly. So we have kind of the first kind of shot here. It's not really a shot because he doesn't do anything, maybe, but he, the persona that he's taking on to kind of, bring Alicia into his world is very effective. And, it's very interesting. Whatever he has planned, I'm dying to see how this turns out. So, this book, again, very strong issue, 4 out of 5. Ardian Siaf, again, just doing some really good artwork here. His work is starting to look a little bit more natural. There are a couple of times in recent issues or in past issues, I should say, where some of his poses looked very unnatural, but they are starting to look a little bit more organic. So that's good. So it's a good start. It's a good way to go for Batgirl number 11. Now on to more bats with Batman and Robin number 11. Terrific issue here, because basically we have, again, the War of the Robins is continuing here. It's kind of like the primary story that we're following, because we have we have Damian again out to take down each of the Robins kind of one by one, and last week he took down Red Robin, and is focusing his efforts this time against Jason Todd, Red Hood. Now, of course, the way, Damian is as he says in one point, he wasn't taught how to play fair, he was taught how to win. And that's exactly what he does, because he strikes with a barrage of not only physical but also mental combat here. Because Jason gets back to his safe house, and he's about to get ready, get into bed and lay down and just go to sleep. But what is there but a crowbar? And basically, Damian is, it's a flurry of, like it's verbal and physical kicks and punches at Jason, because basically, he's saying, you're just another, you were just a street rat that my father picked up, and you were actually the worst of the Robins because you couldn't even follow one simple order from my father, which was to stay put, instead of going inside and trying to take on the Joker by yourself. And your own mother, actually ended up betraying you to the Joker. So you get beaten nearly to death by a crowbar. And so, yes, Damian wins. And leaves with his trophy, which is, of course, the Red Hood helmet. And is whistling all the way back. But unfortunately, for Gotham City, it is undergoing hell right now, because Terminus and his Batman, his anti-Batman squad, if you will, have gone out into the streets of Gotham and are literally branding with fire, actual brands, the symbol of the bat into as many people's chests as they possibly can, except for the female member of this group, who is actually using, because you can see that her ear has been essentially pierced, yes, but almost completely, impaled upon it is a batarang. And so she's throwing batarangs like crazy at people. But everybody else is, burning the brand of the bat symbol into, so many people's chests, like dozens upon dozens of people. And so Batman and Robin take to the streets, and even Batman himself gets branded at one point. But he's using that. Then of course that becomes, that's something that just ends up rallying his strength even more, because there's a great moment in which Batman, he starts to, because he's realizing that there's way too many innocents that are getting caught, that are getting caught up in all of this, and he wants to basically isolate himself from all of these other people. So he is calling out, he is screaming out at who, he doesn't know who's behind it, of course, but to ultimately to Terminus and his gang, to basically stop being terrorists and come at me. I'm the one that you want. I'm, whatever you're doing because of me. So come on and take me on. So I mean, he's basically, in effect, sacrificing himself to a point where he is being, he's calling attention to himself so that he will get everybody else out of harm's way. And that doesn't totally include Robin, or Damian, I should say. But, that's just where, because you see how Batman is always the guy, he will always take, he will always be the one to take one for the team. Doesn't matter. That's who he is. And that's why Batman's the greatest, that's why he's the greatest hero that there is. Because he's always the one willing to make the sacrifice play. But he's also kind of sure that he'll make it out of it. But, again, Tomasi and Gleason do just terrific work here, especially with Damian. I mean, just how centered that they are on his character. And really, I mean, he's arrogant, he's bratty, he's, you know, such an air of superiority about him, and you know, just in every moment except when he's kind of being chided by his father. And even his father makes it a point, because Robin actually has, you know, Damian has one of those brands in his hands, about to do that to one of the villains, and Batman kind of reminds him of his failure with nobody, and so that, again, that focuses Damian on doing what the real task is. And so this is just, again, a terrific issue. Very, very solid 4.5 out of 5 for Batman and Robin number 11. Just terrific, terrific work. Of course, this brings us to Batman number 11. And I'm sure that many of you are shocked that this is not my pick of the week. It's close. It was close, but ultimately this wasn't it. Because the main problem that I had with this book, and Sleepy Reader really hit the nail on the head here, as he did with his review of my own work, is that it's very dialogue heavy. And I don't, obviously, if those of you who have read Batman the Unknown, have taken the time to read my script, know that I am someone who is not against dialogue. But I obviously have seen it in cases where it has, you know, it's screwed things up. So I know that I have to rein myself in on some of the dialogue, and Snyder here, what Sleepy Reader was saying was that, you know, that really what we're seeing here is kind of, again, Snyder's English degree at work here, because, you know, we have this epic fight between Lincoln March, aka Thomas Wayne Jr., and between Bruce Wayne, and between Batman, and, you know, the beak of the owl, the owl's beak, as he kind of, as Thomas kind of refers to himself as. And, you know, this massive, you know, citywide fight between the two of them, because he has almost kind of Iron Man-ish armor on, and is able to fly, and you know, and so on and so forth. And he's kind of leading Batman around by, you know, Batman's own kind of, you know, his own kind of grappling line. And, you know, he's slamming him into buildings. He's talking about, you know, where, you know, the way that he saw things as he was growing up. You know, it was kind of a distorted mirror version of Gotham City, you know, because looking out from, you know, from the children's hospital that eventually, of course, fell into complete and total disarray. And, you know, he was able to see these buildings, but again, it was all from, you know, this mirrored skyscraper. So, you know, everything was reversed. So, I mean, this is essentially what Lincoln, aka Thomas, has kind of built himself up to be. Is he is the yin to Batman's yang. He is, you know, everything that he is against everything that Batman stands for. And he says, you know, he's the one that has actually been watching Gotham the whole time, much like Bruce has. And, you know, so we have, in the midst of this in this like unending melee between the two, a lot of expository dialogue about who Thomas believes that he is, and who, you know, and how he's lived, and what he believes, and kind of what his mission statement is. So it wasn't taxing at the time, but when I look back at it with a more critical eye, because I was just so enthralled. I mean, because when you do kind of strip away the artifice of this particular issue, this really should have been 2 issues. This should have gone into issue 12. That should have wrapped up. You know, it should have been, you know, 2 kind of like 6-issue arcs, however they wanted to do it, and then bring the Joker in number 13. Because obviously, I mean, but I think that there's kind of a rush on that, because everybody's really looking forward to, because we've seen Snyder do work with the Joker before, in Detective on the, you know, of course, the Black Mirror, you know, kind of the whole story arc of the Black Mirror. I mean, that's been called now because it's all collected in the Black Mirror trade. And so we've seen his take on the Joker before, but we want to see, you know, of course, Greg Capullo doing the art, and of course, you know, Joker, you know, he has no face now and everything like that. So that's why I think this one was it's kind of almost oversized in the sense that you feel that that Capullo could have done more action while this fight was going on if this had been stretched into 2 issues. And, you know, because ultimately we do have the question still is he or isn't he Bruce's brother? And there is, you know, after the fight itself is over, there is, you know, kind of an epilogue with Dick Grayson, as they're both talking about how Bruce is basically, you know, he believes that the truth of it is that Lincoln March was just a recruit of the Court of Owls, and that he was essentially kind of brainwashed into thinking that he was Thomas Wayne Jr. You know, and kind of putting all of these pieces of, you know, this puzzle into his brain, but he's not concerned of the fact of it. And that is where this kind of drew me back in. It's like I wasn't out of it, but it was like you know, it's like, okay, the ante is still up here, because he is talking about you know, you kind of get the sense that he's really kind of going to let it go, but no, he's not, because he doesn't have the facts. He believes the truth to be that, yes, Thomas Wayne Jr. was alive for 24 hours, and for that time period, Bruce did have a brother, but, you know, he died in the hospital, and that was it. That's what the truth that Bruce believes, but he doesn't know the facts. And that's what ultimately he'll eventually be on a mission to find out, I'm sure. Where this issue, because it is, I'm talking about the whole book here, kind of drifted on me, and this is why I would not say this is my pick of the week, is really in the B story with Jarvis Pennyworth, because I felt that Snyder, he's not always brilliant, he's not always perfect, and I know that, and but I'm one of, you know, obviously, you know, a huge proponent of his work. You know, even when it's bad, or even when he's not on the top of his game, it's still better than most of the shit that's out there. And, you know, I'll keep on believing that. But he does let, I think, his brain, he gets a little too ambitious here, I think, particularly with the finale of The Fall of the House of Wayne, and with Jarvis Pennyworth's demise. That I think that what he's trying to do here is maybe, I think that what I feel that he's done here is he's kind of overextended himself on adding more to the mythology of Batman and the characters. And I think that, you know, kind of this whole, I mean, what felt organic at first kind of started to come apart in this final part, in this third part of this, this backstory series. And, you know, I do admire the way that does tie in, but there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of unexplained information here. And I think because I think that he was too focused on trying to really make Jarvis Pennyworth an important part of the Wayne family history, that we kind of lost perspective on why exactly Alfred, you know, I mean, we get it, and it's still, you know, again, some really interesting ideas, but the execution just wasn't quite there, despite the beautiful Raphael Albuquerque art. So I guess that's just where it kind of, it didn't fall apart, it didn't make the book bad or anything like that, but the story itself just was kind of weak. But this to me is still 4.5 out of 5, very solidly, a really terrific book. And I'm going to go now into, before I get to my pick of the week, I'm going to go into the worst of the lot for this week. And this also was surprising. And so the worst book of the week was Before Watchmen, Minutemen #2. And I'll tell you why. Now, this is basically, what we have here is kind of the story of how the Minutemen get together. And it's really, more than anything, just a big PR stunt. You know, Captain Metropolis, Dollar Bill, you know, even, you know, Silk Spectre, you know, even Comedian, Mothman, they're all kind of, you know, well, not so much Mothman, but they're all kind of in it for the glory, if you will. But then you have, you know, you have Night Owl, obviously, and you have Silhouette, and you have Mothman, who actually want to do good. So they actually, you know, they invade what they think are, you know, it's like a bunch of you know, they assault the, you know, compound of what they believe is just a bunch of, you know, fifth columnists, but it turns out to be just a warehouse full of fireworks. And of course, Larry kind of spins the story and everything like that, and they pay off all these cops that actually came to the scene. So that, you know, is really insulting to Night Owl and you know, and to Silhouette, especially because Silhouette actually has what is a really important, you know, what she sees as a very important criminal investigation going on with these child abductions. But nobody wants to do that story, which is ultimately what the Minutemen seem to be about, is that they're just about the press. You know, they are kind of almost a license to print money once they really get their name on it. And, you know, Larry and Captain Metropolis are very much kind of in that mode, you know, along with a lot of the others. But like I said, these three, they break off to continue on their mission. And of course, there's the thing that where Darwin Cook really dropped the ball here is his exploration of the character of Hooded Justice. And that's really because what has happened here is that he's made what could have been kind of a, you know, a fun throwback to the mystery men of the 30s and 40s. And of course adding kind of that, you know, that very subversive touch to it, like Alan Moore did, but he's taking it too far now. It was like the first issue was really, really interesting and fun and exciting, and, you know, it just had all these really, really cool moments. All of that just falls to pieces here. And you know, despite his beautiful artwork, and obviously he has good storytelling sensibilities, but he's taken his signature off of it and essentially is trying to do things as he thinks that Alan Moore would do them. And that's where the book falls apart, is that he takes the character of Hooded Justice and basically makes him into basically a gay S&M pervert when he's not fighting crime. And, you know, because that's, I mean, that's the extreme that he's taking him to. I mean, obviously, you know, alternative sexualities, it's nothing. You know, it means nothing now, but of course then it meant a lot. And the fact that he's having this, you know, again, this kind of S&M homosexual affair with Nelson, you know, makes it even weirder and makes it more out of character with what Moore has already created. So again, it's, you know, it was almost like after Darwin read what everybody else had been putting out, like the only other books that I read, admittedly, have been Silk Spectre and The Comedian, and they both, I mean, Silk Spectre was not too bad, but it wasn't good, and The Comedian was just fucking pathetic. And it was like, he just read that stuff, and basically, it almost feels like, okay, well, you know what, this is what the other people are putting out, so who gives a shit? That's really what it felt like to me. It was like Darwin just didn't care anymore. He didn't care about the quality of the work that he was putting out. The artwork, of course, is still stellar. It's beautiful. It's beautifully rendered. He does such a great job there, but it's just bad. It's just a bad story. Bad characterization, bad choices that he made. And so this was a 1 out of 5. It's a really bad comic. And pretty much offensive, really. This will bring me now to my pick of the week. Biggest surprise of the week. And just a great book. And that is New Avengers number 28. I really didn't see this one coming. Basically what we have here is that it takes place at the X-Brig at Utopia. Because, as they said, the X-Men have started taking prisoners. And they're being essentially treated as prisoners of war. And those 3 prisoners are Hawkeye, Spider-Woman, and Luke Cage. And we have their kind of minders are Warbird gets Luke Cage, Phoebe, who is one of the Stepford Cuckoos, gets Spider-Woman because she's basically using her telepathy to block Spider-Woman's access to her powers. And we have Magma, who's minding Hawkeye. And Hawkeye is the first one to really make a powerful escape attempt that unfortunately does not succeed. And we get a really strong sense of where his character is at right now, because he grabs Magma because he can turn anything into a weapon. He's like the good guy version of Bullseye, really, which is why ultimately the Bullseye became kind of the dark Hawkeye when it was the Dark Avengers. Of course, now it's Barney Barton in the Dark Avengers that's going on in that series over there that took over for Thunderbolts that I haven't been reading. And then we have these moments of desperation, and where they, basically Spider-Woman, just by her, her kind of, double, triple, quadruple agent training, gets Phoebe to, kind of be nice to her and everything like that, and of course exploits that as soon as she possibly can to get released. And she gets her powers back. She takes down Warpath. Did I say Warbird before? I meant Warpath. And then basically help Luke and Hawkeye escape. And of course, there's some wonderful character moments between the 3 of them as they're trying to escape Utopia. And then once they're out the door, they are of course met by members of the Phoenix Five, particularly Cyclops and Emma, and there are others there. And they basically, they're able to escape their clutches. I mean, how does that happen? How do these 3 relatively normally powered, obviously Luke, enhanced strength, unbreakable skin, and, obviously, Hawkeye, impeccable aim, and, and Spider-Woman, got the pheromones thing going for her, but of course, also her venom blast and everything like that. These people are able to actually stop these two big members of the Phoenix Force 5 and other members of the X-Men and escape. How is that possible? How is it possible? And I won't ruin it. Won't spoil it. Because I think this is a comic book that should be read by people who are not fans of AVX. Because this shows, again, what a strong storyteller Brian Bendis can be when he really, really steps up his game. Because this, again, it is smaller, character-based moments that make this book work. But while having this really exciting and just action, just kind of action-packed issue, and then having this massive twist that just is like, oh my god, what did I just see? What just happened? And that is fucking brilliant. And of course, Mike Deodato crushes the art in this. I mean, it's, every time I think that his stuff is going to get, maybe a little bit more watered down, and obviously that really happens when he has an inker doing his stuff, but he just never gets bad. He never gets bad. When he is doing his own art, it looks absolutely gorgeous. His character drawings, his posing, his dynamic art style, it's so beautiful and so very fully on display in this issue. And just his character work is incredible as well. I mean, the emotional impact of just some slight shading, just a twist of the mouth, raised eyebrow, something. I mean, it's just absolutely brilliant. This was a perfect issue of comics, and I hope that it gains the same sort of momentum that it had during the whole kind of Avengers versus Dark Avengers square off that it had in the previous in 2 previous arcs or whatever it was, because that was some king shit Avengers stuff going on right there. And which is why this is the Avengers that I keep coming back to for more. Because eventually it will get to an issue like this. And this is an absolute 5 out of 5, 5+ out of 5. Just an amazing issue. So that's it. I'm wrapping up now. It's been an hour 37. So I'm just going to wrap it up here. Just saying, of course, I'll include the link, of course, to my Tumblr page. So remember, just a video response, or if you just want to do a video that you want to show to everybody that reviews Batman the Unknown, please feel free. Batwoman, New 52, her first trade hardback. You will win, of course, with some other cool swag that I guarantee you will think is pretty fucking cool. But apart from that, you'll get more this week as I review The Dark Knight Rises. Looking very, very exciting so far from the reviews that have been released. All of them have been pretty fucking stellar. So this may be another one that actually lives up to the hype. But for right now, I want to thank you again for joining me, and as I review all these comics and talk about all this different shit. And obviously, if you're first time here, please subscribe. Come on board. I'm happy to have you. And like, dislike, comment, criticize. I'm open to everything. Just don't be a dick. That's all I ever ask. So this is me, James Donnelly, from the Shadow Gallery, signing off, reminding you to stay in the shadows.